Hey everyone, Alex Wolf here. Just wanted to let you all know we recorded the pod that's coming up right now, right before the Derrick Rose news broke about Derrick Rose going to be out 6 to 8 weeks with ankle surgery, of course, related to that nagging ankle injury that he's had lately. So, a little bit of this pod maybe doesn't make perfect sense considering that we considered Rose to be part of it, but most of the grand points are still there. And we just want to let you guys know that we will be addressing the Rose news in our post game pod following the game against the Wizards. So keep an ear out for that, but hope you guys enjoy this one and hope it's not too dated considering the 24-hour news cycle. So thanks for listening and kick back, relax, and we got a great pod coming up for you. Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf and Gavin Shaw here, and with the news that Obi Toppin and RJ Barrett might be able to return from COVID protocols tonight. Gavin and I thought that it would be appropriate to discuss all of these developments that have happened during the huge slew of COVID absences that the Knicks have been struck with, and try to come up with some new rotations for what this team is going to look like once it's fully healthy again. So, Gavin, where are we going to go with all this information available to us?
Yeah, so we were plotting out our ideal rotations. The math of it was beyond both of us, but we did our best, and we end up in a situation where we are playing a whole lot of guys. So we'll get into more specifics right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. This episode is brought to you by Truebill. Truebill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't want or need, and can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. And we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen every day. We're available for free on all your favorite platforms, as well as YouTube now, if you want to come look at our beautiful faces, or maybe you think they're terrible and you want to tell us about it. I don't know, whatever. I mean, I appreciate feedback on my looks and how I can get better. So, maybe you want to critique my outfits or something, or Gavin's or whatever. Anyway, I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. He is Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster, and this is Locked On Knicks. We are going to be going over, as we said in the intro, the sort of new rotations, right? We did this show prior to the regular season. It's funny, Gavin, I used this I'll plug them again. What was the website called that I used? I used this site called the Hoops Geek, thehoopsgeek.com, to put together my rotation. They have a really handy visual aid where you could just kind of drag and drop guys and see how things overlap and whatever, which just works really good for my visual brain. So I was setting my rotation up, but it had actually via cookies or whatever in my web browser had saved my previous time that I did this, which was before the season. And let me tell you, things looked pretty different then versus now as far as how the rotation was. I think we've been given a lot of new information to chew on with these COVID absences. We've seen guys step in and step up, like Quentin Grimes scoring almost 30 points in his first NBA start and then probably going down for COVID protocols. Obi Toppin, right before he went out, had 19 and 10. RJ Barrett was starting to figure things out right before he went out. Deuce McBride has one of the best games of his career, and then he's out. Immanuel Quickley finally breaks his 3-point skid, and then he's out. Kevin Knox even was finding time on this team and then found himself out with COVID. So, I think that we've seen a lot of these guys step up when called upon and then immediately have to be yanked away. And now we've seen some guys that, previously we were kind of ready to be done with, like Kemba Walker or Evan Fournier, step in and, put together good performances when the Knicks have been very shorthanded. And so now it's leading to just a ton of questions about how this rotation is going to go down. I'll throw it to you to lead us off. How do you see the rotation shaking out once all these guys are back? And to be clear, we're going to debate what we think Tibbs will actually do in the third segment, but these are just kind of like what we would do.
Yeah, I wanted to say real quick. I thought it was weird in the preseason that you had Amir Sims at 44 minutes, but it was real sign of progress that you have him down to 35 now. All right, I'll get into mine. But yeah, it was a tough exercise, as you said. Like I think Kemba Walker was the name that I kept coming back to and thinking, all right, is this like either you got to not play him at all or you got to play him 30 minutes, right? And that was my initial thinking, and that left me really, really confused. I got a headache. I had to take a couple of Advil, and eventually I settled on a middle ground with Kemba Walker. And with all these guys, and maybe this is cheating, but I think Alex, you and I sort of came down in the same spot where it should be so flexible on a night to night basis because all these guys have really distinct positives and really distinct negatives. Like literally every single person on the roster, with maybe the exception of Derrick Rose, but even Rose has his issues. So I came down on an 11-man rotation. And I just split it up by position. For point guard, it is Derrick Rose playing 25 minutes, Kemba Walker playing 13 minutes, Immanuel Quickley playing 10 minutes at the 2, Immanuel Quickley playing 15 minutes, Evan Fournier playing 15 minutes, Deuce McBride playing 14, Alec Burks playing 4. At the small forward spot, RJ Barrett playing 22, Alec Burks playing 21, Evan Fournier playing 5, Julius Randle at power forward playing 24 minutes, Obi Toppin at power forward playing 24 minutes, at center Mitchell Robinson at 26 minutes a game, Taj Gibson at 15 minutes a game, Julius Randle at 7 minutes a game. And the overriding premise of mine, and I'll quickly say starting lineup of Immanuel Quickley, Evan Fournier, Alec Burks, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson. But the overwhelming theme of mine, I would say, is the idea that you have to earn your minutes every single night, right? There's no guarantees for, even if your name is Julius Randle, there are no guarantees for any single person on the roster. And if you're not playing your ass off, you're going to get benched. And I think the Knicks have the talent to justify that. And there's no excuse for the nights that we've seen time and time again where guys aren't bringing their all. And to your point with players like Kemba, or not that Kemba wasn't playing harder in the year, I would say Fournier is maybe, along with Randall, the primary example of this on the roster. We've seen the last 3 games of vacillations, like when he's maybe it's a health thing with him, but when he's able to fully bring it, he is a completely different guy and worthy of those minutes. When he's not bringing that, he shouldn't be playing at all. So that's sort of my overriding theme. But I'll throw it over to you, Alex, for any questions, critiques, anything you want to note there.
Yeah, I didn't really. I mean, I think we're going to end up pretty similar in many ways. I am kind of curious though, like, so maybe this is spoiling a little bit of what's going to be coming up with mine, but would you cut back a little bit of like Evan Fournier or Alec Burks minutes in order to see a little bit of Quentin Grimes, like even if it's only like 4 or 5 minutes, somewhat situationally, or do you think that he should just sort of be used as the break in case of emergency type guy on any given night, or do you think it should be designed for him to play?
I think he's the break in case of emergency guy. And that doesn't really have anything to do with Grimes. Like there's a world where he is in the conversation for the most useful player of those 3. But I think Burks is too essential defensively, right? And I think that's why we see him playing so often, because there are nights where he isn't shooting the ball that well. But generally, when he's not sleep deprived from a new baby, he is an efficient offensive player. He's a guy who doesn't force the issue. He has that inside-outside game. I think he is a cog in a lot of these lineups. Like he's a connector. He's someone who doesn't take a lot off the table. I think the version of Fournier we've seen in the last 3 games, that is, I'm operating under the premise that is the guy we would continue to see going forward. I think he deserves significant time, because when he's aggressive, he's still one of the 3 or 4 most talented scorers on this roster. And Grimes, for everything he brings as a 3-point shooter and that confidence that he brings to the table, still a relatively small sample size with him. And I think there's like the reason, and maybe you're with me on this, Alex, the reason that Deuce gets a guarantee despite the small sample size is I think Deuce is just, he brings a little bit more to the table in terms of playmaking, in terms of the ability to get to the rim, and a jumper that's looked, I mean, again, just through a couple of games, maybe we'll come back to earth, better than anyone expected. And like Grimes, can hold his own defensively for a rookie. He's going to have his moments, but will not be a complete disaster on that end.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we're seeing is like there's definitely more opportunities for Deuce to play at point guard because of the injuries to the point guards. I think even if Kemba manages to sort of re-endear himself to Tibbs here with how he's been playing lately, and if he's able to earn some playing time again and doesn't just get glued to the bench, I think that, he's still going to have rest nights for his knee, because certainly the one thing that's been, I think, a consistent through these 2 games is that he's looked a lot more explosive, and like the rest sort of helped him in that regard. Like he doesn't have tired legs anymore. Yeah, I think that he's had better bursts coming off the dribble. He's had better stop and start ability. Clearly physically he's feeling better right now. So, if you're giving him maintenance time, Rose seems to have no longer his knees really being an issue, but apparently has a trick ankle now. If Rose is going to be doing that, then taking his time from time to time for that too, then I think I'm in agreement with you. Like Deuce's playing time should be a little more assured than Grimes, who's really fighting for his, versus like Fournier, RJ, Burks, and Quickley. I mean, that's 4 really talented players at the 2 and 3 spot, or depending on how you want to look at it. I mean, I know you said technically like IQ is the point guard for part of the minutes, Deuce is the 2. However you want to look at it, I think we can agree like those 2 probably should be playing together. Whoever's the point guard doesn't really matter, but those are the sort of guys that Grimes is fighting for minutes against. So it is definitely more of an uphill climb for him.
And to be clear, it's somewhat matchup dependent, right? Like you're playing the Boston Celtics and they throw Jaylen Brown out there at shooting guard. You're not going to want to throw Quickley or Deuce at one of those 2. Maybe Fournier and Burks just play the minutes at the 2 that night. Maybe Grimes gets in. You can switch it off based on the night, but for the most part, I like what we saw from those 2 together. And I think the question we have to keep asking ourselves as we go through here, like how much do you react to the last 4 or 5 games where the Knicks were either playing bad teams or teams missing a lot of players or some combination of the 2? But before we get into that, let's take a quick break. I want to tell everyone about Prize Picks. You've been hearing me talk about Prize Picks for months. Have you signed up yet? If you haven't, now is the perfect time. For a limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point, but you must use code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans only who use code NBA. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. Prize Picks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator and offers all the superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game. Prize Picks offers any prop you can think of, from points, assists, rebounds, threes, made, etc. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. Prize Picks also allows mixed sports entries, so you can take the over on Joel Embiid, who's coming off a massive game, combined with the under on Aaron Rodgers in the same entry. So use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, so go to prizepicks.com today or go to your App Store and download the app. All users that deposit and use our promo code NBA will receive $50 free if you use Prize Picks entry scores a single if your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. That's right. All users that deposit and use our promo code NBA will get $50 off if your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy.
And today's show is also brought to you by Boost Mobile. You listen to podcasts for the power of knowledge, like lineup knowledge in this episode. You switch to Boost Mobile for the power of saving money. Because with Boost, you get the power of a free 5G phone, and you can listen to all the latest episodes of Locked On Knicks, or maybe Locked On NBA, or all your other favorite podcasts. The power of 3 unlimited data lines for $30 a month per line, so your family can harness all that brain power too, and the power of one of America's largest 5G networks, so you could do it all at the speed of 5G. With all that money you'll save and all that knowledge you'll gain, just how powerful will you become? Switch to Boost Mobile and find out. Get a free Samsung Galaxy A32 5G when you switch to one of America's largest 5G networks. More power to save. Boost Mobile. Here comes my fast disclaimer. Disclaimer, free phone limited to new customers of 1 per line. Additional restrictions apply. Offers and coverage not available everywhere or for all phones or networks. See boostmobile.com for details. And we're back to the show. Gavin, I'm just going to hop into it because I know the second segment was going to be me introducing my lineup anyway, and then a little more debate. So I'll just hop right into it. My lineup. I guess I'll just go through it. I set mine up a little differently because I used that lineup tool thing. So I'll just go through the top minutes getters first, and then as I go through each player, I'll kind of like detail where they're playing. So Julius Randle gets 33 minutes as my top minutes getter, which should tell you something about the tone I'm looking to set with this. I think a bigger rotation would be really beneficial to this team to be able to try more things out. Tibbs always talks about wanting to try things out, find the best combo of players, whatever. The best way you could do that any given night is to just play as many players as you can. So I'll spoil it. I actually have my rotation going out to 12 guys, which I know is like blasphemous in terms of Tibbs ball. But Julius has 33 minutes. They are exclusively at the power forward by definition, though I'll explain in a minute. I mostly just left it there because it was easier than making a whole bunch of little marks for him on the board for different positions or whatever. RJ Barrett comes in number 2 at 30 minutes and 30 seconds. He plays all that time at small forward. Mitchell Robinson comes in at 29 minutes, my third highest minutes getter. And I guess this shows the renewed faith that I have in Mitch based off how he's been playing lately. But I do think that he could, be that guy and, be one of the highest minutes getters on this team and hopefully be that interior force defending the paint, getting the rebounds, disrupting things like he always used to. And now looks like he's sort of getting his hops back as far as his leaping ability and ability to really slam down some dunks. So hopefully that's the case. He plays all 29 of those minutes at center. Evan Fournier comes in at 24 minutes, 30 seconds. He effectively plays all those at the 2 guard. It's sort of interchangeable. Who's the 2, who's the 3 when he's playing with like RJ or Alec Burks or whatever. It's fine, whatever. Just to call him a wing. He's playing at the wing spot. Obi Toppin actually comes in as my number 5 minutes getter on the team at 21 minutes per game. He's one of the first multi-positional guys. So I have him playing part of his minutes as the power forward and part of his minutes as the center, of course, with Julius Randle out there. So I do want some small ball minutes. I have them playing a couple minutes in the first half that way, like 2 minutes, and then 4 minutes in the second half. That's, of course, flexible. And I think that's my main theme, which I'll get to in a second. I think everything just needs to be flexible with these lineups. And so, I don't have it on the rotation sheet as the small ball lineup closing a game. But if you hit, if you play the first 4 minutes of the fourth quarter or whatever, and you're playing small and it's working, then maybe entertain the idea of closing the game small, because you should always try to go with the things that work. Immanuel Quickley I have with 19 minutes and 30 seconds. Again, just for sake of ease, I have him exclusively slotted in as the shooting guard. He plays sort of a point guard, shooting guard hybrid role. Deuce McBride, actually, I have above of a couple bigger names at 17 minutes. And strategically, I have him playing in the middle of the, like in the middle of each half. So end of first quarter, beginning of second quarter. I think that having that energy from him there is key, because we see so many times where, the Knicks will come out kind of flat to, end a quarter or start another quarter or whatever. Having Deuce in there to bring that like high energy basketball, I think would be very key and very good for the team. Then I have Derrick Rose with 16 minutes, Kemba Walker with 15 minutes. And a lot of how I have them in the rotation basically is to maintain their health, so giving them those minutes doesn't necessarily mean that Rose is only going to play 16 minutes every night and Kemba is only going to play 15 every night. But I think that between their absences, if sometimes Rose is going to be out, then Kemba gets maybe up to 20, 25 minutes. And, you give some combo of those other minutes to Deuce or IQ. Cool. I think that's a good idea. Same thing with Kemba. If he needs a night off to rest his knee or whatever, Derrick Rose can soak up some of his minutes and play more like 25 and then give some of the other minutes to the younger guys. On a night when they're both healthy, maybe just kind of ride the hot hand and just tell them, look, no hard feelings. This is just how it's going to go. You guys probably aren't going to play together. It's probably going to be a 1-for-1, exchange as to who plays. But, we're going to see who plays well and, just go with the hot hand down the stretch and just don't get your feelings hurt. It's just, we're just trying to win basketball games. Alec Burks comes in at 15 minutes. After that, between the 2 and the 3, I do notably have him as part of my closing lineup, ideally. So my closing lineup I have is Rose, Alec Burks, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson. So effectively like a de facto starter in the sense of closing the games, but in the middle of the games, just kind of giving him time where it makes sense. Taj Gibson I have with 13 minutes, basically just soaking up all the minutes where Mitch isn't out there or Obi isn't playing small ball 5. Then Quentin Grimes is the final guy. He makes it a 12-man rotation. I have getting 6.5 minutes as the 3. I mostly just think that Grimes needs to get some playing time, because I think that a lot of him being able to potentially show out and like play as a rhythm player that can sort of snatch a spot any given night, he has to see the floor at some point, because otherwise if he's not out there, Tibbs isn't just going to think like, oh, let me play Grimes, whatever. Tibbs is very much like he needs to see it in front of him to, then think, oh yeah, all right, let's keep playing him for a minute because he's really doing some good stuff. Granted, as we've seen with how he subs out Obi sometimes or other guys like that, sometimes it's not always the case, but you got to at least give him a punching chance. Basically, my main thing with this is like, this would all be fluid on any given night. This is just sort of an ideal of how I could see it playing out, where you're always going to have fresh legs out there. You're always going to have hopefully a good scoring punch, a variety of scoring punches out there at any given time, setting up guys in a good way to, be successful as far as who they're playing with. But like any given night, I would say, hey, maybe Fournier goes off. He could play 35 minutes instead of 25 that I'm slotted for. Or, RJ could be having a really bad night and only play 15 minutes and not get his feelings hurt if like Grimes takes some minutes away from him, or, if Fournier and Burks take away some minutes for him or whatever. So my whole premise here really hinges on players being able to kind of leave their egos at the door, which I don't know if that's necessarily something that's realistic, but it is how I'd like to see things play out if they were able to.
Yeah, and I think that was an area where we overlap. So something I want to talk about is I think the biggest difference between the two of us is you have RJ Barrett at 30 minutes. I'm gonna double check here. I have him at 22 minutes, and to me, the argument is it was just a weird thing to say, right? RJ nominally like the Knicks crown jewel, like their top young player, obviously like the one. Well, Derrick Rose, I guess, but like the nominal like top 5 pick on the roster, like you're preeminent talent, the guy you want to be showcasing, the guy who should be playing the most or second most minutes on the team. And my case against that is, and again with the qualifier that obviously he was sick for a month, is that outside of that 4-game stretch, like I haven't seen it from him, right? Like, is he like today a better player than Alec Burks? Like it would be, I think it would be unfair to ask that question about Evan Fournier, because Evan Fournier has been even worse than RJ for most of this year, but I don't know what he's done to earn 30 minutes a game. And maybe it is just that, hey, like this is the dude, whether he's a trade chip or the guy we build around until the Knicks get someone better, like you have to play that guy 30 minutes a game. He's the future of your franchise. And it's worth seeing again, because he was starting to play a little bit better before going out with COVID. Was it just that he was sick for a month? And is this a guy who was on the precipice of, if not becoming a star, becoming a player just a tier below that, and maybe a second banana for Julius Randle or whoever else is in that primary spot? But I was kind of curious your argument for him getting 30 minutes a game.
Oh, I mean, I think it's basically that. It's that, I know that he's been struggling this year, but I would rather dedicate time and energy and effort into getting him back to where he was earlier this season, or even back to where he just was last season, than spending a ton of time trying to play like Alec Burks or Evan Fournier. Like Burks, I like what he brings on any given night. Obviously we've talked about he's looked like the Knicks' best perimeter defender on some nights, but you want to hope that RJ Barrett can just straight up become your best perimeter defender, like without a doubt. So maybe play him more and give him more opportunities to do that. Evan Fournier and Burks, we've kind of seen like, all right, yeah, Fournier, like I will say, has been playing better of late. Though RJ was too before he got sick, but Fournier has been able to play a little better, putting the ball on the floor, whatever. Fine, give him a little more of a chance, but don't give him a super long leash. I would give RJ a longer leash to figure things out, just by virtue again of like, this is the guy that you want to invest time and resources in and figure out what you have this season, because it's like kind of imperative that you figure out what his price point is going to be right now before you reach this summer, where you're going to have to start offering him a contract extension potentially. And like Alec Burks too, I don't know if I've debuted this take on here yet, so maybe this is something for a little further down the line, but I'm kind of of the mind, for as much as Alec Burks brings to the team, I'd be down to, especially if he starts playing really well again, to really entertain trading him at this point and just kind of free up time, because I think that Grimes is going to, in time, be able to do a lot of what Burks can do for you. Although obviously not as good for a little while, but he'll be able to do some of it. Fournier already can do like a little bit of what Burks can do for you, and RJ can do a lot of what Burks can do for you in many regards, other than the creation. But like, I think if you could sell high on him, to do it, which is also part of why I don't want to invest a ton of time into him, because I kind of think I think that at this point he's one of those guys you should probably like listen to offers for, just because I don't think he's necessarily integral to this team going forward. I mean, we had about a week where the Burks at point guard experiment looked like it was genius, and then now I kind of think like, no, I don't think this is where this team should be going with this. And he shouldn't be their point guard, and that temptation clearly is always going to exist for Tibbs to play him as a point guard, which I just don't think is a great spot for him, especially when it could potentially block like a Deuce McBride or something like that. So we'll see how it all goes. But I think that's my rationale for RJ's. It might not be. I say it's my rationale, but it might not always be rational all the time. But I think that I would rather just put that time into developing RJ, and see where it leads, rather than putting that time into guys like Burks and Fournier, because I think that RJ will eventually just like figure it out, which he was getting close to doing before he went out sick. Hopefully he comes back and can still kind of keep that lightning in a bottle and work the rust off quick and get back to himself sooner than later.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and it's one I will address. But let's just take our final break and get into a jam-packed final segment where we're also going to talk about what we think Tibbs would actually do. But first, I have to tell you all about Truebill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? You do. If you listen to this podcast, it's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in just one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there, so when you want to cancel unwanted subscriptions, you don't have to wait. Truebill's over 2 million users and help save them over $100 million. So don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now, truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/lockedonnba. And with that, we are back on Locked On Knicks. I'm okay with that potentially trade Burks take. My logic in doing this exercise was, what is the best Knicks team that I can build right now? And I think Burks, again, because of what he brings defensively, one of the better 3-point shooters in the NBA this entire season, even if he's cooled off a little bit lately, and someone who can get all the way to the rim and finish creatively and well once he gets there. RJ sort of checks those boxes, right? Like really good defender when he's been fully engaged this year. 3-point shooting obviously was about as bad as it could get for a month, and then seemingly was turning a corner again to being decent. Ability to get to the rim, inability to finish once he gets there. And to me, with Fournier and Burks, my logic for playing them more was that they have that off the dribble 3-point game in particular. And RJ, again, moments of that, just not enough consistency yet. If you're looking more towards the Knicks' long-term future, obviously it makes a whole lot of sense to play Barrett a little bit more. And I think with RJ, what I'm hoping for from him at this point is not necessarily superstardom. It's that he can fit in with a whole bunch of different lineups and that he can sort of fill in all the gaps and says, all right, you need a pick and roll ball handler. I can do that. You need someone who can get to the elbow and hit a jumper. I can do that. You need someone who can swing the ball around the court. I can do that. Need someone who can open three? No problem. Need someone to track the best player on the other team? You got it. And Burks, I think, is that guy today. I wouldn't mind giving RJ the minutes to test. All right, can he be that guy in the future? And is he ready for that responsibility? I'm just wondering in general, though. I mean, presumably not, because at 30 minutes a game, that seems like a little bit too much. But do you like the idea at all of RJ off the bench? Because to me, like, I just get an icky feeling in my stomach thinking about him with the starters, and maybe elevating Immanuel Quickley to your starting point guard or Derrick Rose solves a little bit of that, or just RJ playing better solves a little bit of that. But from what I've seen this year, like him and Randall and Fournier together, even though the lineup data for that with those three without Kemba is actually really good, in my mind, I haven't liked how it's looked all year. It constantly, and maybe this is on Julius's shooting more than anything else, it always feels a bit clogged to me. And I would love RJ to get run with that bench unit that's so full of shooting, so full of energy. And to me, that maximizes RJ as the passer and kind of empowers him to be the best version of himself.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea at all. I think, though, if you're bringing RJ off the bench, I would still want him. You would still want to hopefully have him closing halves, which then what does that mean? Does that mean that Fournier is not? Maybe, because we've seen Fournier not closing halves plenty. So, I'd be down for a lineup potentially where RJ comes off the bench and, maybe you start like Rose, Burks, and Fournier as your, as your top three. And then, obviously Julius and Mitch or, whoever you're going to start there. That could maybe work. I mean, I guess that, to your point, Burks is sort of like a less high ceiling, but more consistent version of what RJ hopes to be. So, I think that maybe there's something to be said for that of then just letting RJ come in against the lesser competition off the bench, hopefully get some overlap minutes with Mitch out there, but also play with Obi and IQ and, whoever else is going to make it into the rotation, if it's Deuce or whatever, just play with a lineup where he can run and run and run and, defend and, sort of be like the alpha among those guys and, direct traffic some and, do whatever it is he's going to do as long as you can work in ways for him to still be able to close games because I think he's going to figure it out. And, I think that he's ultimately going to be a guy that you will want on the court more often than not by the time the dust settles this year. And, I think that the last 2 years have sort of showed us that slow starts are just sort of, at least at this point in his career, maybe this is like the biggest hurdle for him to get over, but slow starts are sort of in RJ's DNA at this point, and like massive cold stretches are. But every other time in his career so far, when he's found a massive cold stretch, he's eventually broken it and gone on a hot stretch of all hot stretches to end the season, which is sort of what he did as a rookie. He had a really long cold stretch and then followed it up with some really long hot stretches. And obviously last year started off so cold for the first like 20 games or so, and then came back and was, ridiculously good, particularly shooting the ball and stuff like that. So if it's used as sort of a means to just sort of jumpstart him and ensure some consistent good production, then cool. But I would want his destiny to ultimately be to be back in the starting lineup and closing games and all that good stuff. But Gavin, I think we should probably move to our final bit here, which is trying to determine what Tibbs is actually going to do. So I'll throw it to you first for like a guess. Like if you were gonna, let's just maybe we could play the game of you show Tibbs your lineup card. What are the things that he points out and says that's not going to happen? That's not going to happen. You're crazy. Blah blah blah. Like what are some guys that you think you're hopeful about that aren't going to happen, et cetera, et cetera?
I think Obi playing 24 minutes a game. I think he says no to, which and weirdly we haven't talked about Obi that much in this, but you go through the Knicks lineup data, which I just spent an hour pouring over, and you look at all the Knicks best lineups. Predictably, you see like the one name you see every time: Obi Toppin. Best two-man lineups: Obi Toppin and Immanuel Quickley, Obi Toppin and Derrick Rose, Obi Toppin and Quentin Grimes, whoever. Like he is the common theme in the Knicks playing well this year. And the reason I had him at 24 minutes and the reason you had him around that is because we'd like to find out, does that carry over when he's playing more against starters? Does that translate? And I think Tibbs is not, I don't know if he's not interested in that. I think he feels like it's almost an impossible premise. He's like, well, then you don't get rim protection. And I'm saying, all right, let's risk it for however many minutes a game. But I think he crosses off Obi Toppin playing that much. I think he crosses off Kemba Walker. We talked about this pre-show a little bit, and for me, there's an element there that this is awkward at this point, right? Like it's pretty clear that they're not speaking. Kemba, with every moment he's on the floor, is basically saying like, "F you, I should have been playing. You made a mistake. You're an idiot. Look how good I still am." And like Kemba Walker is not someone who's ever going to say that out loud because he's a really classy dude and a fantastic teammate and a hell of a person. But I think he's also a competitive killer, and he's thinking that. And like the play we've seen from him in the last two games has been him screaming, "I deserve to play," whether it's this team or another team. But I think the damage, like when you make that move of benching him and pretty much indefinitely, it took again the resurgence of one of the greatest pandemics of, or that's poorly phrased, of COVID. It took the resurgence of COVID to get Kemba Walker back playing again. I think no matter what he did, unless he just was like even better than he'd been the last two games, like there wasn't really a world where that translated into him getting consistent minutes again. And that being said, Tibbs wants to win more than anything else. If Tibbs is like, all right, you know what? Hand to God, I was wrong. Maybe that still comes to fruition. But for now, I would say cross off Kemba Walker. Maybe Quentin Grimes over Deuce McBride. That's what I'm curious about. But obviously, we've seen throughout the year that Grimes has been the preference for Tibbs over Deuce. Tibbs also notably went to bat to the Knicks front office to draft Deuce, so he clearly likes him a whole lot too. But for now, I would probably slot in Grimes for those 14 minutes. I think because Tibbs, the main reason he benched Kemba initially was because he was concerned about how his size translated into switches defensively. Deuce is a much stronger defender than Kemba Walker, so maybe he doesn't have quite that same concern, but I think he would like Grimes out there because he has those extra 3 inches or so. But Alex, what stands out to you in terms of your lineup, my lineup, and how Tibbs would react?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you with the Kemba thing. I think Kemba's toast, so I think he would look at that and be like, "No, my mind was made up." And some people read into his comments after the game last night as being like, uh, "Oh, Tibbs is eating crow. He's saying that Kemba's awesome. Whatever." I heard it as almost like patronizing, like Tibbs being like, "Yeah, I know Kemba had another good game. I'm tired of talking about him." Um, because it was just he just kind of deflected and was like, I'm going to play the best players that I think give me a chance to win. Kemba played great tonight. That's awesome. Good for Kemba, but that's how I'm going to manage things going forward. And it seems like he still thinks that Kemba maybe isn't the guy. Even though I think it would be beneficial based off what we've seen to continue giving him some playing time and trying to work out something with him where you just say like, look, this is partly due to looking out for your health, but partly because you just can't keep up on defense anymore. We want to put you in positions where you can go out there and mostly just score and, have a good time doing it. Cause clearly you still have a good time crossing guys up and, throwing oops and stuff. So let's throw you out in some situations where you can do that. Even if it's not going to mean you're playing a ton of minutes. So I guess we would see, but I think the Tibbs would probably poo-poo that. He would probably poo-poo the idea of playing Deuce McBride 17 minutes a game. I think he'd be like, no, it's going to be Rose, and I'll mix in some Quickley and some Burks at point guard. But Deuce isn't going to get those minutes yet because he's just not ready for it or whatever. To your point, yeah, he definitely likes Deuce. He definitely loves Grimes too. I think he really does love all three of the rookies. He speaks very effusively of Jericho Sims too. But I just think that I think that he would just say no. Deuce isn't going to get 17 minutes. Deuce can maybe get 5 or something, and it'll be the curse word situational. And then I'm trying to think who else. I actually think Obi might be able to get north of 20 minutes going down the stretch. And I do think we were starting to see that Tibbs was a little more willing to go small sometimes, particularly with Noel entering the protocol right now and Tibbs seeming somewhat reluctant to play Taj for whatever reason. Not the last couple games, but in general, like Noel seemed hurt. So you would think like just play Taj, but he wasn't doing it. So I don't know what's up with Taj and if he just wants to avoid playing him too much, but I think he's been more willing to try out the Obi and Julius 4-5 combo, which can hopefully be enough to finally get Obi consistently over that 20-minute plateau. He would probably also just look at the sheer number of guys on my rotation and say, well, by virtue of being over 10, Grimes is gone. So no more Grimes. He would probably also slot in Noel for Gibson at full health. At full health, I might agree, but it would need to be like the actual definition of full health and not like Nick's doctor says he can, walk on it without, dying. But clearly Noel is not in good shape right now physically. So, not leaving Tibbs to be the doctor. I would want Noel out there over Gibson only if he's at full strength. So as of right now, I would want Taj. Tibbs would probably be like, the second that Noel's back, he's my number 2. Okay, good for you, Tibbs. So yeah, that and Grimes being out, that's probably about where I think it would be. I do think there's a realistic chance though that we will see some more Julius and Obi 4-5 lineups because I do think he was finally starting to soften on that before all the COVID absences starting with Obi.
Yeah. I think that's a good note as any to end on, Alex. Any final notes on this exercise, takeaways, big picture thoughts?
No, I'm just excited to see RJ and Obi come back and then the rest of the guys in time because it's been weird not having them out there, not being able to keep tabs on them every single game. So certainly I as long as they're feeling good from the any potential complications that they had from catching COVID, I hope that they're ready to come out and start rocking again and hopefully rock around the Christmas tree a little bit on Christmas because that would be nice.
I think Yeah, I'll very quickly say as my final note, I think we're going to learn more about Tom Thibodeau as a coach, or where he's at this point in his career as a coach, than at any other time since he's taken over the Knicks over the next 15 to 20 games, because these questions are hard, right? There's no easy answers here. And I'll go back to what I said at the beginning of the show. How much of what we've seen over the last 4, 5, 6 games can be taken seriously? Like the game where Grimes went off, the game where Deuce went off. Grimes didn't blow out. Deuce did it against kind of a crappy Rockets team. Kemba and Fournier being back. One of those 2 games was against the Pistons, who are basically like a college team at this point. So what does all that mean? How does he measure it? And is he willing to shift with new information? We've seen that he can nudge, right? He can go a little bit more in the directions that us fans or podcasters want him to go, but he never really, or rarely. Last season, he made some dramatic shifts from earlier in his career. Can he do it again? Can he keep innovating? It's what makes the best coaches in the NBA the best coaches, right? They're always able to adapt and bring the best out of the roster they have that year. I think Tibbs, because of what the front office did this summer, has a lot of options, but very few perfect options, and therefore some very interesting questions. We'll see how he answers them over the coming weeks and months. But until then, I'm Gavin Shaw. He's Alex Wolf. This was our stab at figuring out the Knicks rotation. But until next time, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Be good, and we'll talk to you all soon.